The boardroom was silent, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the occasional rustle of papers. Richard Langley, CEO of Horizon Dynamics, sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, his jaw tight and his eyes fixed on the quarterly reports. To the outside world, he was the epitome of success, a self-made millionaire at 42, with a sprawling estate in Greenwich, a private jet, and a reputation for ruthless efficiency. His tailored suit, crisp white shirt, and silver cufflinks gleamed under the fluorescent lights, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside him. For weeks, something had been gnawing at him, a suspicion that festered like an untreated wound. It wasn't about the company's numbers, those were impeccable, as always. It was personal. It was about Emily, his pregnant wife of 8 years, who was due to give birth to their first child in just 3 months. Emily had always been the perfect partner, at least in the eyes of their social circle. She was elegant, poised, and charming, with a smile that could disarm even the most cynical investors at charity galas. Richard had met her at a tech conference in San Francisco, where she'd been working as a marketing consultant. Her sharp wit and quiet confidence had drawn him in, and within a year, they were married in a lavish ceremony on a private beach in the Maldives. Their life together had seemed idyllic, until recently. Richard couldn't pinpoint when the doubts began, but they had taken root, sprouting into a tangle of paranoia that now consumed him. It started with small things. Emily's phone buzzing late at night, her quick glances away when he asked who was texting, the way she seemed distracted during their rare moments together. Then there were the longer lunches with friends she never named, the new perfume she wore, and the faint scent of cigarette smoke on her coat, a habit she'd never had. Richard's suspicions had crystallized the previous night. He'd come home late from a board meeting, expecting to find Emily asleep. Instead, she was in the study, her phone screen glowing as she typed furiously. When he'd asked what she was doing, she'd fumbled, claiming it was just work emails. But her voice had trembled, and her eyes had darted to the side, a telltale sign he'd learned to recognize from years of negotiating high-stakes deals. He hadn't pressed her then, but the seed of doubt had grown into a choking vine. By morning, he was convinced. Emily was hiding something. Maybe someone. That afternoon, as the board meeting adjourned, Richard's phone buzzed with a notification. It was a text from an unknown number. Check her messages. You'll see. His blood ran cold. He excused himself, retreating to his corner office with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. His hands shook as he opened Emily's iCloud account, a shared login she'd never bothered to change. He scrolled through her texts, his heart pounding. There it was, a thread with a contact labeled, M. The messages were vague but damning. Miss you already, can't wait to see you again, and a photo of Emily laughing at a cafe, one Richard had never seen. His vision blurred with rage. He didn't know who M was, but he didn't need to. The betrayal was clear. By the time he got home that evening, the penthouse was quiet, the city's skyline glittering through the windows. Emily was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, her swollen belly visible beneath a loose sweater. She smiled when she saw him, but it faltered when she noticed his expression. Rough day? She asked, her voice light but cautious. Richard didn't answer. He dropped his briefcase, crossed the room in 3 strides, and grabbed her wrist. Who is he? He demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Emily's eyes widened, her spoon clattering to the counter. What are you talking about? She stammered, trying to pull away. But Richard's grip tightened, his anger spilling over. Don't lie to me, Emily. I saw the texts. I know about M. Her face paled, and for a moment, she looked like a cornered animal. Richard, you're scaring me, she whispered, her free hand instinctively cradling her belly. But his rage was blind, fueled by weeks of suspicion and the sting of that anonymous text. He raised his hand, and before he could stop himself, he slapped her across the cheek. The sound echoed in the silent kitchen, sharp and ugly. Emily gasped, stumbling back, her hand flying to her face. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't speak. The air between them crackled with tension, the weight of what he'd done settling like a stone in his chest. For a moment, he wanted to apologize, to take it back, but the image of those texts burned in his mind, and he turned away, storming out of the kitchen. The next few days were a blur of cold silence. Emily stayed in the guest room, her face bruised and her eyes avoiding his. Richard threw himself into work, but the guilt gnawed at him, mingling with his anger. He told himself she deserved it, that her betrayal justified his reaction. But the memory of her shocked expression, her hand protecting their unborn child, haunted him. He started digging deeper, hiring a private investigator to track down M. He needed proof, something concrete to validate his actions. The investigator worked fast, delivering a report within a week. M. was Michael, a former colleague of Emily's from her consulting days. They'd been in touch sporadically, mostly about professional matters, but a few messages hinted at a closer connection. There was no hard evidence of an affair, no hotel receipts, no incriminating photos beyond the cafe snapshot, but it was enough to keep Richard's suspicions alive. Meanwhile, the world beyond their penthouse was closing in. A junior executive at Horizon Dynamics, Sarah, had been watching Richard closely. She'd been his assistant years ago, before climbing the ranks, and they'd shared a brief, reckless fling during a business trip to Tokyo. It had ended abruptly when Richard reconciled with Emily, but Sarah had never forgotten. She'd kept tabs on him, her ambition matched only by her resentment. When whispers of Richard's domestic troubles reached the office, gossip fueled by a housekeeper who'd seen Emily's bruise, Sarah saw her chance. She had her own secrets, including a file of emails from that Tokyo trip, flirtatious exchanges Richard had assumed were deleted. She leaked them to a tabloid, anonymized but detailed enough to spark rumors. The story broke on a Monday morning, splashed across a gossip site known for exposing corporate scandals. Horizon Dynamics CEO's dark secret, affair exposed amid domestic drama. Richard's phone buzzed incessantly as the news spread. Investors called, demanding explanations. The board scheduled an emergency meeting. His PR team scrambled to contain the damage, but the internet was merciless. Memes of Richard's stern headshot circulated, captioned with mocking phrases like, slaps wife, loves mistress. He was livid, but the irony was inescapable. His own infidelity, long buried, was now unraveling his carefully curated life. Emily, meanwhile, had hired a lawyer. She moved out of the penthouse, taking only a suitcase and her dignity. Her bruise had faded, but the emotional scars were raw. She refused to speak to Richard, communicating only through her attorney. The divorce papers arrived the same day the tabloid story broke, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting full custody of their unborn child. Richard's world was collapsing, and he had no one to blame but himself. The investigator's report, once his weapon, now felt hollow. Michael's messages to Emily were ambiguous at best, friendly, perhaps too friendly, but not proof of an affair. Richard's slap, however, was undeniable, witnessed by the housekeeper and now fodder for the press. As the scandal grew, Sarah's role came to light. A whistleblower at the tabloid revealed her as the source, and Horizon Dynamics fired her for ethics violations. But the damage was done. Richard's reputation was in tatters, his marriage over, and his company's stock plummeting. He sat alone in his office, the city's lights mocking him through the windows. The anonymous text that had sparked his rage was traced back to Sarah, a calculated move to destabilize him. Karma, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor. Richard had accused Emily of betrayal, only to be exposed as the true betrayer. The child he'd been so eager to protect would grow up in a fractured family, and he had no one to blame but himself. The saga of the CEO who slapped his pregnant wife over suspicions of infidelity, only to have his own affair exposed, continues to unfold with layers of betrayal, retribution, and public spectacle that rival the most dramatic soap operas. The story, already steeped in scandal, takes on new dimensions as the consequences of the CEO's actions ripple through his personal life, his company, and the broader social media landscape. What began as a shocking act of domestic violence has spiraled into a tale of hypocrisy, corporate fallout, and the relentless machinery of public judgment, fueled by the internet's insatiable appetite for drama. The CEO, let's call him James Carter for the sake of this narrative, a fictional name to ground the story, was a man who had built an empire in the tech industry. His company, a data analytics firm valued at over $1 billion, was a darling of investors, with a reputation for innovation and aggressive expansion. Carter, in his mid-40s, was the picture of success, charismatic, polished, and often featured in business magazines as a visionary leader. His public persona was meticulously curated, projecting an image of a devoted family man, married to his college sweetheart, Emily, who was now pregnant with their second child. Their seemingly idyllic life was the envy of their social circle, complete with a sprawling estate, charity galas, and carefully staged family photos on social media. But beneath this polished exterior, cracks had begun to form. Emily, a former marketing executive who had stepped back from her career to focus on their family, had sensed James's growing distance. Late nights at the office, unexplained trips, and a certain coldness in his demeanor had planted seeds of doubt. She confided in close friends about her suspicions, but never imagined the storm that was brewing. James, meanwhile, was grappling with his own paranoia. Rumors had reached him, whispers from colleagues, vague text messages he'd glimpsed on Emily's phone, that suggested she might be unfaithful. These suspicions, whether grounded or not, festered in his mind, fueled by his own insecurities and the pressure of maintaining his public image. The incident that set this drama in motion occurred at a private dinner party at their home. In a moment of rage, fueled by alcohol and his spiraling suspicions, James confronted Emily in front of their guests. The confrontation escalated, and in a shocking act, he slapped her across the face. The room fell silent. Emily, visibly pregnant and stunned, left the room in tears, while the guests, a mix of business associates and friends, were left grappling with what they had witnessed. Word of the incident spread quickly, leaking to tabloids and social media, where it ignited a firestorm of outrage. The hashtag CEO scandal trended within hours, with users condemning James's actions and calling for accountability. But the story didn't end there. As the public piled on, demanding James's resignation and decrying his behavior, a second bombshell dropped, one that would turn the narrative on its head. An anonymous source, later revealed to be a disgruntled former employee, leaked evidence of James's own infidelity. Hotel receipts, text messages, and even grainy photos surfaced, showing James in compromising situations with a woman who was not his wife. The woman was identified as Sophia, a high-ranking executive in his company's marketing department, known for her sharp intellect and ambitious drive. The affair had been ongoing for months, conducted in secret during business trips and late-night, strategy sessions. The irony was not lost on the public. The same man who had accused his pregnant wife of infidelity, going so far as to assault her in a fit of rage, was himself entangled in a clandestine affair. Social media erupted with memes, hot takes, and scathing commentary. Karma doesn't miss, one viral tweet read, accompanied by a screenshot of James's smug corporate headshot juxtaposed with a blurry image of him and Sophia at a hotel bar. Another user posted, he slapped his pregnant wife over suspicions while living a double life. The audacity. The internet, ever the unforgiving judge, turned James into a pariah overnight. The fallout at James's company was swift and brutal. The board of directors, under pressure from investors and public scrutiny, placed James on immediate leave pending an investigation. The company issued a carefully worded statement, emphasizing its commitment to ethical leadership, and distancing itself from James's personal conduct. Sophia, too, faced consequences. She was quietly suspended, though her role in the affair was less scrutinized than James's. Employees, already shaken by the public scandal, began to question the company's culture. Former staff took to platforms like Glassdoor, posting anonymous reviews that painted a picture of a toxic workplace where James's charisma masked a pattern of favoritism and questionable decision-making. Emily, meanwhile, became an unwitting symbol of resilience. After the incident, she retreated from the public eye, reportedly staying with family in a different state. Her silence only amplified the public's sympathy. A GoFundMe page, started by a friend, raised thousands of dollars to support her and her children, with donors leaving messages of encouragement. "You don't deserve this, Emily. Stay strong for you and your babies," one read. Speculation swirled about whether she would file for divorce, with legal experts weighing in on the potential financial implications. Given the couple's wealth and the high-profile nature of the case, any divorce proceedings were likely to be contentious, with Emily potentially entitled to a significant portion of James's fortune, including his company shares. The media frenzy showed no signs of slowing. Tabloids dug into James's past, uncovering stories of his ruthless business tactics and rumors of prior indiscretions. A former colleague claimed he had a history of blurring professional and personal boundaries, though no concrete evidence supported these allegations. Meanwhile, Sophia's background was also dissected. Described as a rising star in the industry, she had joined the company 2 years earlier, quickly earning James's trust and a rapid promotion. Some speculated that their relationship had influenced her ascent, though others argued her qualifications stood on their own merit. As the scandal unfolded, the narrative took on a life of its own. Talk shows debated the ethics of workplace relationships, the pressures of corporate life, and the gender dynamics of public shaming. Some commentators pointed out the double standard. While James was vilified, Sophia faced less vitriol, her role often framed as that of the other woman, rather than a co-conspirator. Others argued that the real issue wasn't the affair but James's violent reaction to his suspicions, which highlighted deeper issues of control and entitlement. On social media, the story became a cultural touchstone. Influencers and commentators used it to spark broader conversations about infidelity, power dynamics, and the consequences of unchecked privilege. A popular podcast dedicated an episode to the scandal, titled, "When Karma Claps Back," dissecting how James's downfall was a cautionary tale for those who believe wealth and status shield them from accountability. The episode racked up millions of downloads, with listeners praising its analysis of how public outrage can amplify personal failings. For James, the consequences were existential. Once a celebrated figure, he was now a cautionary tale, his legacy tarnished by his own actions. Rumors circulated that he was considering a public apology, but advisors reportedly cautioned against it, fearing it would only fuel the fire. His attempts to lie low were thwarted by the internet's long memory. Every move he made was scrutinized, from a sighting at a coffee shop to a cryptic post from an unverified account that some believed was his. Emily's next steps remained unclear. Some reports suggested she was consulting divorce attorneys, while others claimed she was focusing on her children and her own healing. Friends described her as devastated but determined, unwilling to let the scandal define her. The public, meanwhile, continued to rally around her, with #JusticeForEmily trending alongside calls for James's permanent ousting from the company. The story, at its core, is a stark reminder of the fragility of public personas and the speed with which they can unravel. James Carter, a man who once commanded boardrooms and headlines, now faced a reckoning, not just for his infidelity, but for the hypocrisy and violence that exposed it. As the internet continues to dissect every angle, the saga serves as a mirror to society's fascination with scandal, its hunger for justice, and its unrelenting demand for accountability. Whether James can salvage his reputation, or whether Emily will emerge as the true victor, remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: in the court of public opinion, karma is a ruthless judge.